Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for tuning in to Step Into Your Sunshine. This is Rachel Coudron, your host, the owner of Etsy Boutique Coudron's Curiosities, RC Copywriting, and very soon to be RC Events, where my holistic retreat, my holistic seminar will take place in May of 2024. In the previous episode where I talked to you guys directly, we talked about my physical ailment and my physical journey through holistic care. And I would love to tell you that that was my experience and it was empowering and it was incredible because it was all of those and it was the end. But life wouldn't be like that. In 2018, I moved to France with my husband while pregnant. And this was a desire that came out of our hearts and a desire to live where he grew up, because for the previous 6 years, we had lived in the US, in Oklahoma, where I was born and grew up. At the end of 2018, in August to be specific, we would decide that rather than going and visiting his family for December, that we would move. You guys might be thinking, this is crazy. You're telling me you moved in December and decided in August. And yes, that is exactly what happened. We sold all of our stuff. We sold our house. We arranged things for our dog so that she would be able to move with us. And we packed up and we moved. Now, some of you guys might be thinking, oh, this is dreamy, incredible. France and Paris and the city of love. And so much of that is true. But that wouldn't be my story. I'll tell you that back in 2012, before I moved, I did study in France for 6 months. So when I arrived, I thought that I knew what I was getting into. But this would prove to not be the case. In retrospect, I would realize that quite literally, the moment that I stepped off the plane, I lost all of my autonomy. I lost all of my independence. In a characteristic, a character trait that truly defined me. I loved being autonomous. I loved being independent and being capable, taking care of things on my own, having my own views and opinions on things. And this would be taken when I stepped off the plane. And it was a really, really hard pill to swallow. I'll also let you guys in on a little secret. I didn't speak French when I arrived. So all those beautiful, intelligent, deep conversations that I was having in the US came to an abrupt halt. That was no longer. I could barely ask where the toilet was. I could never have a deep conversation. All of a sudden, I was completely codependent on my husband. This would come as a shock for both of us because it was a dynamic in our marriage that had never existed prior to this time. Now, I would love to tell you that I assimilated beautifully, and it was the most incredible, gorgeous experience of my life. But again, that wouldn't be true. Just shortly after arriving, I fell into a deep depression because I didn't know who I was anymore. Moving to France took away one of my strongest characteristics. And I had no one to turn to. Now you may be thinking, I had my husband, which is true, but you also have to remember that he had just spent 6 years away from his family. And while I was his wife and I was important, during that time at the beginning, I was not the most important. The most important was being reconnected with his family, going to events, experiencing life again like he did in his teenage years. And so, no fault of his own, I was put on the back burner. So now I'm no longer the priority, and I can't speak French, and I've lost my autonomy, and I have no idea who I am. I knew from my previous experience with counseling, I knew what was happening, but I didn't know how to save myself. And I didn't know if I could be saved. But I did have motivation inside me. And I'm a person that needs to be internally motivated in action. I had a child. And if you remember from this last episode, my child was a gift. I was ecstatic to be pregnant because at a previous time, I never believed that that was possible. And I knew that I was going to have to dig deep. I was going to have to figure out how to save myself so I could be there for my unborn child. And so I did. I reconnected with my counselor back in the US. I told her of my happenings, my thoughts, my struggles. And I restarted acupuncture. And this is also when I started journaling. Now, a little piece of information for you. I still have that journal that I wrote when I was pregnant, and I reread it a while after Eleanor was born. And it is the most difficult journal I have ever read. I struggled so profusely that it was hard for me to read. Yet journaling was like an escape. It was the only space that I felt safe enough to really share how I was thinking and feeling. Because we were living with his parents at the time. And why I love his parents, my parent-in-law, they didn't feel like a safe space because I didn't know well enough for that to be a safe space. And while my husband is a safe space, he was preoccupied. He tried, and there's no fault that I am laying on him or blaming him for. It's simply the way that things happened. For me, journaling was like a gift that I finally was able to express those feelings. And through counseling, acupuncture, journaling, and a bit of yoga, and my unborn child, I was able to get myself back into a peak state for my daughter to arrive. On June the 19th, 2019, my life would change forever. When my daughter was placed in my arms, my life was transformed instantaneously. You know, and I knew that I would lay down my life for my child in that instant. That she was the light of my life, my purpose, my biggest joy. And with all of that energy, I poured myself, all of my soul, and all of my energy into her. And the next year, the first year of her life, yes, it was challenging, but it was always such a gift that I got to wake up in the morning to breastfeed her or to sleep next to her or to be with her. Because again, so many times in my life, I never thought that was going to be a possibility. And I would love to say that this was the end of my mental health struggles, that I was able to regain myself, my purpose, and I'm coming to you now fully healed. But again, that this would not be the case. 1 year after she was born, the summer of 2020. Now, for many of us, this is a triggering year, the year of COVID, the year that our world flipped upside down and inside out. I was blessed that my parents were able to come in January of 2020, just a month before Brittany shut down. So here we are in the middle of 2020. We have spent months in lockdown. Now, as I mentioned in previous podcasts, when I moved to France in December of 2018, I didn't speak French. And in the summer of 2020, I still didn't speak French. Yes, I had improved. But the first year of a child and being a mother is incredibly difficult. It zaps your energy, and your sole focus is your child. And I didn't have time or energy to go to language courses. And then in 2020, we would have lockdown, we would have mask, and we would have partitions. Now, as also mentioned in previous podcasts, I am hard of hearing. I don't hear at all in my right ear, and I am partially deaf in my left ear. So when you put distancing, mask, and partitions on top of a language that I don't fluently speak, well, that is a disaster. I couldn't communicate with people in society because I didn't understand them. 2, I didn't hear them. And when you can't conversate with people or understand what people are saying, whether it is in your native tongue or in a foreign language, then you do not develop in that language. So here I am at 2020 in the summer. And I can feel those thoughts creeping back in. And I know the path that it leads down. And I also know that I must mitigate this immediately because I didn't want to go back to where I had been previously. And I thought to myself, when was the last time I experienced joy? When was the last time I experienced purpose? Because for me, what triggered this moment was now I was only defined as a mother. I had no other purpose. I had no other title. I didn't know who I was outside of being a mother. And so I thought, joy and purpose. And the first thought that came back to me was when I was a business owner in Oklahoma. I loved being a business owner. I loved communications with other people. I loved the highs and lows. I even love the grind because I'm doing it for me, for a better purpose. I am my own boss. I'm building the life that I want. And that was when I felt joy and purpose. And so, in the middle of lockdown, in the middle of very fleeting thoughts, I decided to relaunch my business, Coudron's Curiosities. I would slightly change what was offered by specifically focusing on hand-painted wooden jewelry. And I launched it into the world. And I knew deep inside that if I wanted to connect and make sales, I had to speak to other people. Because at the time, I was in the middle of lockdown. I was speaking to no one outside of my 1-year-old daughter and my husband, who, bless his soul, is not very talkative. And thus, I searched Facebook, I searched the internet looking for different groups that I could potentially be in, connect in, because not only did I actually need to feel connected to people, I wanted my business to become successful. Now, this decision would change the trajectory of my life. I became involved with Hike Those Likes Marketplace, which is a beautiful organization group based out of the UK. And then ultimately, I would find Moms in Business International. And this group captured my soul. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged in a group. I saw myself reflected in its members. I saw young mothers who were also entrepreneurs. Mothers that needed to breastfeed and run their business. Mothers with children hiding under the desk while they're trying to work. Mothers who showed up to networking events with their children. And that was life-changing for me. I had found my people and I was ecstatic. And to this day, I'm still ecstatic about Moms in Business International because at their core, that's who they are. They're moms and they're entrepreneurs. When I started the relaunch, I didn't own a computer. I only had my phone. And when my daughter was breastfeeding or napping on my chest, I was running my business. And so many women in that group are the same, and they understand me. And even if they were more experienced mothers, they knew the struggle. And at last, I was understood. I didn't know that I needed that feeling. I didn't know that I needed to be connected with people and understand that I had a bigger purpose. But that group and Leona Burton changed my life. Once I started to connect with other women, I realized that this is what I love. Going back to my joy and my purpose I experienced when I was an entrepreneur in Oklahoma, it reunited me with those feelings. It reignited my drive, my passion for being an entrepreneur. I love it with every core of my being. And I could never go back to a traditional job now. Now, at the beginning, we were talking about depression. And I know many of you that will tune into this episode know people that have experienced depression, or you yourself have experienced depression. I have family members who have. I have loved ones. I myself have. And my case is not always the story. The counseling that I experienced with my first transition in life, when I went down my holistic journey, it gave me the platform and the foundation that I needed to be able to recognize the change in my thoughts. And further than that, to realize that these thoughts were negative and how they were impacting my life. This is not an all call for counseling and therapy. But I do want to emphasize that that experience allowed me to connect with myself, allowed me to heal from some of the most traumatic times of my life, and gave me the tools that I needed, that when depression would come later, when I moved to France, and then again a year after my daughter was born, that I was able to recognize the symptoms and knew what I needed to do to remedy them. If you are that person who is looking for help, who was in the same experiences that I was, who felt like there are no other choices, or who feels right now that they have no one to speak to, I am here for you. Reach out to me and I'll be there. If you need to connect with somebody that can help you, I will help you connect with whoever is necessary. Because I want you to look at my story and to know that you too can change. You too can be at a completely different state in your life in a span of 5 years. It can happen so much faster. But for me, the person I was when I moved here in December in 2018, and the person I am today in September of 2023 are very, very different. My experiences have made me stronger. And there's absolutely no way that I would have the businesses I have today and the connections I have today without going through this process. It is never better to struggle alone. There are people, and there is me, that can help you. Holistic care throughout my physical and mental struggles have changed my life. I have used cold water therapy, counseling, acupuncture, yoga, meditation, journaling as some of my go-to modalities. Now, I also use essential oils, and they have saved my life, literally. And I know that they can transform yours. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to the session today. I am so thankful for all of you, and I'm so happy that you're here. We have new episodes launching every Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. French time, 7 p.m. UK time, and 1 p.m. US Central Standard Time. Please, if you need me, reach out. If not me, then a dear friend or someone that has shown you kindness. I know the heartbreaking loss of losing someone who lost their battle with depression. And this is not going to be your story. Thank you all for tuning in.